Hello, and welcome to the Find Creative Expression podcast, conversations about art and creativity. I'm your host, Sarah Crawford, author, playwright, musician, basically obsessed with art. You can find more information at findcreativeexpression.com. Let's get rolling. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 31 of the Find Creative Expression podcast. Coming up, I have an interview with artist and illustrator Dozier. Charisma is super interesting, and we had a really great conversation, so definitely stick around for that. So most of the time, I record my interview and the intro on the same day, which I should have done this week, because when I recorded the interview earlier in the week, I felt totally fine, and now I'm sick. Well, it's just a cold, so it's not like a big, huge deal, but not feeling great. So my intro is not going to be as long as it usually is. I mean, not that it's like super long most of the time. It's usually under 10 minutes, but it'll be shorter than that. So what have I been working on lately? Well, I haven't really been doing much with my novel, but last week I was kind of busy working on this sort of creative video for my mom's birthday, and it was just like little clips of all of her friends and family saying happy birthday and like what they loved about her and stuff like that. And it went over really well, and I think she really liked it, and, that just made me think that for creative people, I think it can be really appreciated when we take the time to make creative gifts instead of just buying something for someone. I mean, don't get me wrong, I definitely do buy stuff for people. And I'm not like creative about it every time, but I try to like use my creativity in that way, for people that I love as well. So that's just, it's the holidays are coming up, and if you're having trouble trying to find a gift, maybe think about doing something creative. Think about, you could make a scrapbook. You could make a mix CD. People don't really listen to CDs anymore. You could make a Spotify playlist. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of other things. I can't really think right now because I'm kind of zoned out on too much Dayquil. What have I been into lately? As I'm recording this, Beach House has just released 4 new tracks in chapter 2 of their new album, Once Twice Melody. So I pretty much have those on repeat. I particularly love the song Over and Over. I've been listening to it over and over, So I'm super excited about that. And, I'm rewatching Downton Abbey. It's always good to have like a comfort TV show on when you're sick. And Downton Abbey is sort of, like a British soap opera. But, over dramatic, soapy kind of shows really just give me a lot of comfort and make me happy. So anyway, that's about it for me. I won't make you listen to my Dayquil'd self ramble on any longer. So let's go ahead and get into the interview. Hey everyone, I am here with Dozier. Charisma is an illustrator and an artist who works in such mediums as printmaking, drawing, ceramics, and painting. She attended the distinguished LaGuardia High School for Performing Arts in New York City, and she graduated summa cum laude from Georgia State University with a degree in film and video. Currently, she works with her partner on their tech YouTube channel, and she works as a freelance illustrator. Welcome, Charisma.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm super excited, and I hope this is my first time being interviewed for a podcast, so I'm like hoping not to trip over my words.
Well, there's a lot of tripping over words here at the Find Creative Expression podcast, but it's all about just finding creative expression. So it's okay. But yeah, thanks so much for joining me for episode 31 of the podcast. I'm super excited to get to chat with you about art and creativity.
Whoa.
Yay! So how did you get into the visual arts?
So it kind of started when I grew up in Brooklyn. My mom, she would always take me to the Brooklyn Museum of Art. Like since I was little, go to the Children's Museum as well. So I was always surrounded by like art ranging from Egyptian art all the way to like late European and colonial stuff. So
cool.
I was like, yeah, I was always surrounded by it. It was very important for her to like put me in these environments where I could like see the different forms, see the different ways that art is expressed and like not feel like in a box that art is only one thing. So more props to mom for that one. And then going on, then I was like, okay, I did a lot of drawing in middle school. And I was like, when you're in 7th grade, 8th grade in New York, you kind of, if you want to get into a specialized high school, you have to start thinking about that like 7th grade. So you can get your portfolio and stuff ready when you get to 8th grade. So I was like, all right, I want to do something art related. My mom was like, you're not leaving this middle school, because it went all the way to high school, unless like she was like, you either do that or try to apply. But she's like, I'd rather prefer you stay there. I was like, I want to go other places. So, and I'm like, I want to be in the city. I'm all the way in Queens. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be where all the big kids are, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right. So I worked I think a few months to get my portfolio ready. I had no idea what to like put in it. Kept looking at the requirements on the website to make sure everything was there. And on top of that, when you apply to any of the specialized high schools, LaGuardia was the only one that was art specific. Everybody else was like science and math. And I was like, ugh, I don't want to do that. That's not what I want to do. So you had to get your portfolio in. You had 2 live drawings of like there were students there that you had to live draw. You had to draw from memory, and then talk about your process to the arts administrator. So that was a lot already.
Right.
Like, I'm just going into high school, like you're 8th grader. So yeah, that was like me jumping in the deep end and be like, nope, I want to do this.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah, I actually started out high school at a performing arts high school here in Atlanta area. But yeah, I only lasted like 2 weeks, and then I was like, I'm gonna go back to my normal high school and start a band. Which, so, but was your mom also an artist?
She like in the 80s she did a lot of graffiti work. but she was a correction officer. Yeah, but then she's a correction officer, so totally different. But she she wanted to be a DJ when she retired. So she always loved like music and the art scene and always taking me different places and stuff. So she always loved that aspect.
Right. So an enthusiast, Okay. So what's your creative process like? Like, do you like to plan your work out beforehand, or does it come together more organically?
I'm all over the place a little bit. I'm doing a mentorship right now with another illustrator, Meg Hunt. So it's been nice to have. I have 2 different projects I'm doing. One like redesigning 3 book covers of The Crucible, and then a longer form one about women's bodies used in horror films, looking at feminist film theory. So,
oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's more of the longer one that I'm chipping away at, and it's killing me a little bit because I'm used to working fast. So this has been like a 3-month thing. But it's been helpful because it doesn't force me to feel like there's a time limit or I gotta share this with somebody or online or whatever. It's just like, this is my own little personal thing and it'll get done when it gets done.
Right.
But normally if I have an idea, I either like there's a whole bunch of like post-it notes like around because I just like I have an idea. I must write it down real quickly or like in my notes in my phone or sketch it very crudely. Like I remember I had like a scribble of something. I'm like, I know what that means. I will come back to that in a moment. But I see it and then I'll just do it if time permits. But I'm usually kind of erratic when I have an idea. I'm like, I'm doing it and that's it.
Right.
And it's not gonna leave my brain until it's done or out, into the world. So
yeah. Well, it's interesting because one thing I've noticed talking to different kinds of artists, whether it's a painter or a writer or a musician, many of us have a tendency to want to keep revising and changing and tweaking things like forever. And our work never feels finished until someone just kind of forces us to be done with it for whatever reason. So when you're working on an illustration or drawing or painting, when does your work feel finished or does it ever?
When I'm bored with it, and that usually is like I'll give it like a week or so tops. I like my brain is like there's this other thing like almost like a fish in a in a sees a new shiny thing, like I gotta go over there. I asked my boyfriend like either for critique and stuff if I'm like feeling like something's off or if like it's like 90% there. I just need that extra like, hey, what is this missing? And he usually like tells me, I'm like, yep, that's it. All right, cool, it's now finished. Because I don't like to dwell too much on a piece because then I feel like you're beating it to death at the end of it. It's already there. If there's mistakes, it's okay, move on. What you did wrong or what you want to change and bring that over to the next piece, because the longer you stay on that, it will never be done.
Yeah. I definitely have had that experience like especially with my novels that I've ND published, because like you find it doesn't matter how many times like you edit it and how many other people look at it and how many editors you hire, like there's always going to be some typo or formatting thing or something that gets passed. And so like I've been I end up finding them like forever, and then at some point you just have to kind of accept like, okay, this might not be perfect, but like it's out there.
Yeah, I think that's the human element too. You can't always try to erase it. There's going to be like just summer inconsistencies, but hey, it shows that a human made this, not like a computer or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So do you have a favorite medium?
Right now I'm mostly doing digital only because it's a little bit cheaper.
Right, I hear that.
But I love pen and ink. I've recently kind of get some pen and ink and like paint markers because I've been recently trying to fill up my sketchbook. I feel like I've been neglecting it. So filling it up with just random doodles and just not feeling too precious about them, but just experimenting mostly.
Right.
Yeah, but digital and pen and ink most definitely are my two loves. I love them so much.
so like if money wasn't like an issue, like if you just had all the money in the world, like what would you have like a favorite? Like would it still be like pen and ink or?
Yeah, because it's very simple, but there's so much you can do with it with different like, brushes, or if you want to just like add in like different tones, you can water it down, you can layer on top of it. It's very once you figure out like what you can do in black and white and a little bit of grayscale, then everything else is kind of easy if you want to think of color.
Right. It's just that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a great base point, and it's fun, and you can't be too precious about it too. Once you make a mistake, you gotta either figure it out or you're starting the whole thing over. So it teaches you to be a little flexible.
Yeah, like Bob Ross, the happy little accidents. I love Bob Ross. He's like my guru. So some of your work really seems almost like anime to me. So I was wondering if anime has been an influence for you or if that's something that you've been into.
It's so funny because I'm like, I don't consider it at all. It's like, because like I follow like Japanese or manga artists and stuff, and I'm like, oh, their line work is like so clean, and mine is like all over the place. It's like I jump between, like I have multiple different styles depending on what the project calls for that I'll use. So
Right.
I know the techniques that they're using to get a certain thing,
Hmm.
but I'm like, I like everything that I like see. So it's like an amalgamation of like an illustrator in Eastern Europe that I really appreciate, or it could be like comic book work, and it's just like a whole modge podge of just different things, or like, oh, I really
Right,
like that
right.
artist, you know. So it's interesting to hear, because I'm like, I don't know how to categorize use my work, because it can be a whole bunch of things, because I take influence all over.
Right.
So I'm not gonna say
So
you're wrong. I'm just like, I don't know, maybe.
yeah, no, I can kind of see that because it didn't feel like straight up anime, but it
Mm,
like there are some, and not it's not all of like your work that I've seen
mm,
anyway. But like just some pieces, like
mm.
it kind of has that vibe, you know.
Yeah, I'll take inspiration from people who do character designs, just everything. I just love art. I just consume it at a very like, I love it so much. Give me
Yeah,
all of it, and just learning all the different approaches or the ways people see the world. It's just awesome.
right, right. So, who would you say are your kind of biggest artistic influences, or like what styles or, you know,
Hmm.
movements? I don't know.
Well, it's gonna be biased because I love comics, so I've been really getting into indie comics a lot. So Tillie Walden stuff is fantastic. She has a lot of young adult graphic novels, and just
Right.
her storytelling and her line work just works so well. It's like take me away, like the world she creates.
Mhm.
Fantastic. Valeria O'Connell, her lines are just super crisp, very just concise. Like she has so much confidence in when to like pull everything together, and then push it back, but it feels cohesive. Love it. Her stuff is just, it's just a joy to like just look at her lines, and the detail is like insane. uh
Yeah.
yeah. Viv Tanner and Ellie Baum, they are, I want to, they're not Romanian. I don't know why I want to say Romanian, but they're Eastern European comics
Right.
that made Heart of Gold, which their Ellie's stuff is just different. It's just whimsical and light, but her coloring is out of this world. I'm just like, yo, you got it.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, it's just, comics are, I'm like, it's a long form content, but for
Right.
people to like still uphold like each panel looking like an illustration is incredible.
Hmm.
And I'm just like, the just the thought process of like how to translate that but iterate it quickly in a shorthand is like crazy.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm always super impressed by like graphic novel
Mm-hmm.
artists and comics, like, because it does. It seems like it almost seems like storyboarding for like a
Mm-hmm.
film, but more professional and like finished and
Mm-hmm.
but like man, I mean I'm not really like a visual artist, but I mean I've tried to like do some storyboarding before for like some
Mm-hmm.
short film stuff I worked on, and it was like very
Mm-hmm.
slightly better than stick figures.
Yeah.
But you know what, but I got like the idea across, like I
Mm-hmm.
knew what it meant.
Yeah, nah, that's the most important part. As long as you can communicate and you understand the story underlying the visual information that you're putting on a page, that's basically just, that's the whole thing. As long
Right,
as you
right.
can like, see it, and it exists in truth for you to understand. That's the main thing.
Right, right. Totally. So I noticed that you had some illustrations on your website inspired by Carry On, the Rainbow Rowell novel, which, by the way, I love Rainbow Rowell, but side note. So I was wondering, are you often inspired by like other types of art, like literature, music, to create visual art?
Oh heck yes. I've been going back for I'm trying to read Frankenstein, but I keep getting pulled away from it because it combined the one I got combines Shelley's like original words with Wright Bernstein illustrations. I'm like, yes, let's combine the two. And it's a different approach because he did more like 77 full body illustrations of her work, Mary Shelley's work. So I was like, oh yeah, let's do it. Let's see these two worlds combine. I was like, oh, so cool. And I gotta reread Jane Eyre. I love Jane Eyre. I love Michelle, not Michelle, what? I like the Bronte sisters. Is it Jane Eyre made by?
Yeah. Jane Eyre, is that Charlotte Bronte? Yeah,
I want to say yeah, because
I
Wuthering
think
Heights is Emily.
Yeah, I always like get the Bronte sisters like mixed up in my head, but I love Jane Eyre, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're like, Jane Austen and all that good stuff. So do you listen to music when you're working?
I do. I usually try to do when it's like pertaining either to a mood or sometimes I just jam out and like just see what comes and what's flowing. And my music taste is all over the place. So it could be like 1980s house music all the way to like the Lumineers.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, let's put it on shuffle and see what happens. And sometimes I'll just listen to one song like, ooh, this is the vibe. Just listen to one song and just be in the loop of like, yep, this is it.
That's cool. So it's like, so you kind of like just put it on shuffle and like let the music take you somewhere like unexpected. That's cool. I like that approach.
Yeah, can't always control the journey. Sometimes you just gotta let it flow.
Yeah, exactly. So you graduated from Georgia State University with the degree in film. So are you working on anything film-wise right now, or do you plan to in the future?
It's strange because for Georgia State's film program, they probably made it expand a little bit more. But when I was there, I took film classes, but not production classes because they were always filled up and they were small, and usually seniors and juniors got first dibs. And depending on when you couldn't sign up, they were always out or people, it was always filled up when I got to register. So I was like, all right, darn. But a lot of the stuff that I did get to take was film theory and film criticism. So I was like, this is awesome. Oh, I love this so much. Because essentially what you're doing is you're breaking down the medium of film and understanding the different theories of like how people analyze it, what are the different conventions on how, they got to this idea of like, hey, are we looking at the male gaze? Is like, how is the female, going back to the female body, how's the female body being represented in this way? Does the auteur or the director, is he the main like vision of the film? And looking at all the films throughout time and seeing, how that changes and all the trends and all that stuff. So it's interesting because it allowed me to break down and further understand the medium rather than just the production part. Because I'm like, the production part isn't hard. You have to know more about the tech and stuff of, what kind of lens do you want to use, but the understanding of why are you using that, and what is that effect that you're trying to, create in the symbolism and the history of that. So I feel like it's a little more important to know the history and the conventions that other people have used and then make your own. But yeah, currently I'm not, the long story short, I'm not at the moment, but I constantly still taking films and watching them. Like, I haven't watched Dune. I'm so sad. It was on HBO and I missed it, so I gotta find it somewhere. But yeah, films are still a huge part
Yeah, no,
Mhm,
I know what you mean because I mean I took a few film classes in
mhm,
college that were like film theory kind of
mhm,
classes, and it was, I was an English major, so it was kind of like, looking at a film and like analyzing it.
mhm,
It was very similar to analyzing a novel or a work of literature, and
mm,
yeah, I thought it was fascinating, like seeing, how people use the medium and how it's changed over time. And well, so I think, did you find that like studying film in that way influenced your like art or
mhm.
illustrations or anything?
Yeah, because like it forces you to think about, okay, what mood are you making? Why is this important? Kind of like what is the overall kind of some because when you're doing an illustration, you're in a sense directing a whole little scene that is like
Right,
frozen
right.
in time. So thinking about, okay, like what is the kind of like mise en scene going on, like what are the props that are happening in the scene, what time of day is it, what are the characters doing, how are they acting, or, it's kind of you're setting that stuff up. In the back of my mind, I might make a little lore like, oh yeah, this happened all before or whatever, but
Yeah.
nobody sees that. They only see this point in time.
Yeah.
um but it still helps, especially when analyzing or like looking back at films to look at like their lighting or staging, what have you. It helps because you just have that closer look rather than being like, this is it. I see the camera movements, which are okay, but overall,
Right.
how is everything working together?
Right. And film is such a visual art, obviously. So I mean, I feel like all of the visual arts can kind of like inform each other a little bit.
Yeah, they all take for money. That everybody's just hands in the pot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, everybody's doing that, like writers and
hmm
musicians. I mean, we're all just like borrowing from each other and collaborating, and
hmm
like it's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
So you work as a freelance illustrator for clients. So
hmm
how do you balance your own art with your freelance work?
Well, I stopped taking commissions currently because um it just I'm like, all right, would I rather be spending time on other people's stuff? I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm like, would I rather be spending time on other people's stuff rather than doing the stuff that I really want to put out? So
Right.
if a project is like, if it's not aligning with like what I want to do, then I will just be like, nah. Because I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, if I'm working on it, will I be happy doing that, or will I be thinking constantly like, dang, I could be doing something else?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to have that negative feeling toward your work. So, but but I try to do, if I do, somebody does come to me, I'll be like, okay, no, I don't do logos. I hate when people ask me that. I'm like, I don't do that. Please look what I do. Well, yeah, one, if people don't look at my site or look at the work that I put out and they ask me
Yeah.
for me to make something completely different, I'm like, okay, you didn't really look at what I offer. So
Yeah,
already it's
yeah.
a red flag. And then of course, their goals for it, if they don't really align with mine, or might have some differences, I'll be like, I may not be the best person for your project. So, and it's
Right.
okay, you can't be afraid to say no, because you'd be like, oh man, I might lose out on something. But like, if you're already compromising on what you're willing to do, then just don't do it. It's not worth it. You're gonna just regret it later.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you can't say yes to everything. That's
mm-hmm.
something I've had to learn because, like I've had a tendency to be like, I'm going to do all the things.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
I totally get that.
as a creative, like, it's a lot of work. Like, you gotta, your brain, the people are paying for your time and for your
Mhm.
like creativity, and that's not to be taken lightly. And you can be using that, you know, for a mirage of different things. And
Right.
you don't want to feel like, am I just squabbling this for just this, X amount, when I could be doing something else that will just bring me joy. So yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. So what are you working on right now?
So currently I'm preparing for a holiday show that I hastily applied to. um, Other than, well, yeah, keeping track of inventory and all that stuff. And then other than that, I'm finishing up this project for the mentorship that I talked about earlier and outlining it because it was supposed to, it's basically a zine in a zine format because I want to make film theory kind of like more easier to access for people because film theory can be really dense and very confusing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make it approachable to people. So like, hey, like if you're interested in learning more about this, so the paper I'm using is like Linda Williams's paper on body genres and the different ways. Well, the main point that I'm focused on is that women's bodies have traditionally been used in horror as a way to express or to influence the audience. So looking at Carrie, looking at The Brood, Cronenberg's The Brood, and then Nightmare on Elm Street as like the three films. So like see how this is used or counter used and kind of giving like little examples and kind of a roadmap on, what is Linda's main things in this paper instead of like reading the whole thing because it can be kind of dense.
Yeah.
But I just, it's just so fun and I really would love people to get like more into film theory and crit because it's different from a review. People think film reviews are like film criticism. They're different.
Right.
They're different things. But just to like open that conversation and horizon, and just foster, that community and just talk about films in a different way.
Yeah. No, I like that. That's really cool. And that's super interesting about, like women's bodies in horror films. I mean, I'm not like a big horror film person in general, so that's like, I mean, but I've seen like Carrie and like the classics, but I can't deal with like gory stuff. Like I can deal with like scary, but I can't deal with like people chainsawing like faces off.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much.
Too much for me. So what books or TV shows, movies, music, etc. are you really into right now?
Oh man, all right. So books I've been okay, there's so many, I'm looking at them right now. I finished up A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. It's so good. And it's don't read it if you don't want to cry. It's absolutely fantastic, and the illustrations that it's very different, the illustrations that are in the book, because it's very like visceral and like pen and ink and like bleedy all over the place,
right?
But it goes with the subject matter of this little boy, like losing his mom to cancer slowly. So it's like hard topics, but
yeah,
it goes with the thoughts. Snapdragon by Kat Leyh, really really wholesome and adorable, and it's for YA. I get a lot of YA comics, and I'm trying to like write also a YA graphic novel. Yeah, so that is like in the back of my, also with everything else happening, trying to do that. The Fox and Star by Coralie, Bickford-Smith. More like a young kid one, but she's really well known for her graphic design sense, and it's very like, it's sterile, but she does it in a way that it doesn't come off as like very sterile, which I really appreciate, because I'm like, okay, different approaches, we see that. Paper Girls, also just Brian K. Vaughan, his stuff is fantastic, and Cliff Chiang, and Saga. I was recently getting into Saga.
Cool.
Yeah, I was like, I finally got the second volume. I'm like, yay, let's go space opera, family drama. We love to see it.
And I will try to go back and link to all this stuff on findcreativeexpression.com in case anyone's interested in checking it out.
Woo, support graphic novels. They're awesome.
No, I think that's super cool. So I mean, I don't really read a lot of graphic novels. Are there like a lot of artists who also write the novel, or is it more like a collaboration?
For image for the socks for Saga and Paper Girls, it's mostly like a writer artist team. But for Tillie Walden, she writes and she draws everything, which is nuts.
Right. Yeah. No, I can't even
Insane.
imagine. I mean, it's hard enough to write a novel and then to be like, okay, now I'm gonna draw the whole thing. Like,
like let's add pictures now. For Laura Dean keeps breaking up with Valero-O'Connell and Mariko Tamaki. Mariko wrote the script and then they hired on Rosemary to do the illustrations for it. So sometimes it'll be already written and the writer will just have to pair up with an illustrator that they feel will like be the best style fit for the project, or sometimes off the bat, if they're like already have somebody in mind, they'll just work on it simultaneously.
Right. That's cool.
So all the different ways, and of course you got web comics, which are there's so many.
That's true. There are a lot of those, but it's cool. I mean, there's that's one of the things with like technology and all these digital mediums. It's like it's really just kind of opening up like possibilities and different ways to find creative expression.
Hey.
So, okay, I have a question that I ask everyone on the podcast. So, why do you think art is important?
Well, I think art is important. One, that I feel like it's like a part of the human soul. Like, you need to have that vehicle to just create something or just make, I feel like just the act of making something that didn't exist or was in your brain or in your heart and that you wanted to be out in the world, like for real.
Yeah,
like wild and exciting and a little scary, or it could just be for you. But I feel like everyone needs that little vessel to just be free and not be constrained, like, oh man, will it make money or will it be popular? Just like, no, just I want it to exist. And I feel like that's more than needs to be. Sometimes there's any more explanation than that, other than just I have this idea and I just want it out there. So.
Right. Yeah. I like thinking about, the kind of like there's no limitations really when you're creating, like you can do literally anything. So no, it's very freeing. Yeah,
there's
no, I like that. Yeah, exactly. So, where can people find you and your work?
Well, you can find me on first my website at charisma.me. So charisma, like the regular adjective, and then lowercase d. Everyone be like, wait, are you sure? I'm like, yes, it's charisma. And
that's a super cool name, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I always hear, you have a lot of charisma? I'll be like, you're not the first person to say this, nor will you be the last. Also find me in Charisma Dawes, so DOZ_art at Instagram, and Charisma Dawes on Twitter. And if you want to see me in person on December 18th, I will be at the Alpharetta Holiday Market. It is somewhere in Alpharetta. It's in Union Park, I want to say, in Alpharetta, underneath the Atlanta. God, I'm horrible at this. The Atlanta Street Market, or it would have Indie Market. There we go, at AIM. It's under Atlanta Indie Market. I will be there selling some extra prints and fun stuff and talking with anybody that wants to stop by the table. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I will also link to like all of your your website and social media and everything on findcreativeexpression.com. So everybody listening, go check it out.
Hey.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks, Charisma. That was great.
Oh, thank you for having me. And thank you for having this cool talk. I'm like, hey, yes, art. It was really fun. So just nerd out for a bit.
Yeah. That's what I'm about. I'm just nerding out. Like it's a good time. I had such a great time talking to Charisma, and I hope you found it enjoyable as well. Coming up on episode 32, I'm going to be talking to photographer Crystal Turnbaum. Crystal is a good friend of mine, and she does some really interesting stuff with photography. So I'm pretty excited to talk to her. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to the Find Creative Expression podcast. Please leave the podcast a review on your favorite podcast platform so that other people can find us as well. Thanks so much for supporting the podcast, supporting indie artists, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next episode.